Welcome back to Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Crayden. Yes, we're going to go to live question period in a few moments. Well, a few minutes. The members are reading their delightful statements right now, and I know sometimes, occasionally, they're worth listening to. Most times, well, it's just between the MP and their constituents. So we won't uh, we won't go there too soon. I got a couple things I want to share with you this morning because incredibly, I don't know how I missed this yesterday, but I certainly didn't this morning, and put an article out on this. This is my article in the Post Millennial. I wish that had been my headline. That's not the one I submitted, but it's better than the one I submitted. Justin Trudeau suggests democratically elected right-wing politicians in EU elections, that's European Union elections, are a threat to democracy. That's just one of the ironies, if you will, or the hypocrisies of what Justin Trudeau said about the EU elections. And of course, he dragged out the usual nonsense about populism being this grave danger to democracy, even though populism is democracy. And how can you say it's a threat to democracy when these people were elected democratically? But we'll get into his statement, actually, because I talked about this quite a bit yesterday and how these European Union elections were a complete repudiation of three things: globalism, the war in Ukraine, stop funding the war in Ukraine, stop sending billions, and climate change. Stop the climate change hysteria. The Green Party got demolished all over Europe in these elections. And Marine Le Pen's party in France, which is not exactly far right, it's conservative populist, it's anti mass immigration, it's anti climate change hysteria, it's anti-war in Ukraine. Let's stop the war before everybody dies. That's what we had to do in the First World War. Everybody was just about dead on both sides. And had things kept it going, the United States would have probably been in the same position because it was a war without end. And this is what's happening in Ukraine. So let's listen to what Justin Trudeau had to say about the EU elections. Typical hypocrisy.
We have seen around the world a rise of populist right-wing forces in just about every democracy that we've seen. And it is of concern to see political parties choosing to instrumentalize anger, fear, division, anxiety. My approach has always been to respond to it, to understand it, and to look to solve it, to roll up our sleeves, work hard, and with ambition for this country and for our future. And I continue to be convinced that Canadians are thoughtful about the challenges we're facing and ready to see them solved, rather than just allow themselves to be have their anger amplified without any solutions offered.
My approach has always been, what has your approach always been? To roll up your sleeves, he says, and to get on and understand people? No. Your approach, Justin Trudeau, is to call the police when people disagree with you, to have heads crushed, to have people thrown in prison, and then to go over to Europe and say how dangerous it is that the European Union is electing these whole populists. Even though it's democratic, it's not democratic because it's anti-democratic. He doesn't know what he's talking about or what he's even mean. And Justin Trudeau's approach is to be authoritarian and not democratic. Justin Trudeau's approach is not to try to understand his political opponents. Justin Trudeau's approach is to tar his political opponents as misogynist, as racist, sometimes even Nazis. Justin Trudeau's approach is to demonize his political opponents as people not even worthy of rational thought discussion, of not even worthy of his thoughts, because these people are just beyond the pale. Justin Trudeau's approach is to suggest that if you're not on his side, you don't matter at all. And to hell with you, we'll find a jail cell for you. That's Justin Trudeau's approach. And he has the gall to tell reporters yesterday that he's so concerned that people are electing people he doesn't like or he doesn't agree with. This is not democratic, he says, even though it's a democratic election. And this is just not right because these people aren't interested in actually dealing with problems. Well, maybe they're not interested in dealing with problems the way Justin Trudeau deals with them, which is to incarcerate people and to bring down the full force of the state against you, or to call you names, or to take away your free speech with the Online Harms Act. But maybe they have a better idea. At the same time, Justin Trudeau is going on about this horrible occurrence in Europe. Deputy Prime Minister and / Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is going on about what? What do you think she's going on about? Oh, how pure poilievre's Canada is going to be a catastrophe. And it's just not going to have the same kind of freedom and opportunity as Justin Trudeau's Canada. I'm sorry. What freedom is that? What opportunity is that? And of course, the reference here is this crazy capital gains tax, which is on properties of $250,000, which I'm sorry, that's the average price of a cottage these days. This isn't a tax on the super rich. Justin Trudeau's the super rich, and I'd like to know how much he's paying in taxes. Let's listen to Chrystia wax eloquent about Justin Trudeau's Canada.
But I would also like to ask Canada's 1%. In fact, Canada's 0.13% to consider this. What kind of a Canada do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a country where kids go to school hungry? Do you want to live in a country where a teenage girl gets pregnant just because she doesn't have the money to buy birth control? Do you want to live in a country where the only young Canadians who can...
I'm sorry, I have to stop her here. So unless the state coughs up for everybody's birth control pills, everybody's going to be unwanted. Every teenage girl is going to have unwanted pregnancies. Isn't there some other way around this? I'm sorry, but
buy their own homes are those with parents who can help with the down payment. Do you want to live in a country?
We live in a country right now where nobody can afford to buy their own home because of interest rates and because the price of a home is skyrocketed to $300,000 and more.
Where we make the investments we need in healthcare, in housing, in old age pensions, but we lack the political will to pay for them and choose instead to pass a ballooning debt onto our children. Do you want to live in a country?
Ballooning debt? You are the finance minister passing a ballooning debt onto our children. You spend twice as much as we take in. You're the one with the $50 billion budget deficit from the last budget alone.
Where those at the very top live lives of luxury, but must do so.
I can't help myself. I've got to stop her again. The ones at the very top lead a life of luxury? Who is she talking about? The politicians who are exempt from every rule and every law. Justin Trudeau, who lives like he has no one to answer to.
In gated communities, behind ever higher fences, using private health care and airplanes, because the public sphere is so degraded and the wrath of the vast majority of their less privileged compatriots burns so hot. Every Canadian across our great country needs to ask themselves these same questions, because the stakes could not be higher.
So who's flying around in jets? Private jets? Justin Trudeau. Who's living in isolation? Justin Trudeau. Clearly, Chrystia Freeland is describing Justin Trudeau's Canada not the alternative that we hope Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre might be able to create if he wins the next election. Because whatever he's talking about is completely contrary to the Justin Trudeau Canada we live in right now, where we can't afford a home, we can't afford to even feed ourselves anymore. We are obsessed over gender ideology and sexuality. We are obsessed over climate change, and we don't even think about the things that matter anymore. So I think this demonstrates again that Chrystia Freeland is a delusional hypocrite in the same way Justin Trudeau is a delusional hypocrite. They're both together 2 bricks short of a load, which is what the thumbnail is talking about today. Just making sure question period hasn't started yet. But that is, of course, the Canada we have. And there seems to be something serendipitous, almost profound, in having Chrystia Freeland as Justin Trudeau's deputy. Because the two of them are both hypocritical and delusional. They both believe, I think very strongly, that they're doing so much for Canadians by giving you what you don't want or need, by taking your money away and giving it back to you in other forms, but never quite enough and never in equal amounts. About lying to you about the state of the country, about saying Canada's in the best state of all G7 countries, and when we're actually last. About telling you that people are coming to Canada to invest money when actually they're leaving the country in droves to get away from the high taxes and the lack of opportunity in Canada. Both of them are completely delusional and both completely hypocritical. Thought you would enjoy that before we get into question period this morning, which will be on momentarily. Let's have some fun. Did you believe that yesterday? How long? 45 minutes to get the sound system going again, the translation system? I'm just glad Melissa Lansman finally, after 3 or 4 attempts, got the question about the spying, which is still the question we need answered. Who are these MPs? So let's hope we get some questions about that. We're not going to get any answers, but we got to keep the pressure on, because if every MP is implicated, if we have no names, that means every MP in the House is potentially guilty. So the pressure should mount on the Trudeau government to release the names, because there are some MPs who are innocent. The vast majority did not, apparently. Some reports say there were 11 or 12. So I'm basing that on that report. I'm basing what I'm saying on that report. I'm saying the vast majority probably aren't working for foreign governments. But apparently there are at least 10 or 12 who are, and we need to know their names. And I would think if I was an MP, I would want their names known so everybody didn't think I was the one spying for China. Where is common sense today with governments, with MPs? We need to put pressure on this government, and I hope the MPs do it themselves, because that might be the reason they need to use. Let's go to question period.
Mr. Speaker, on a cool September